Happy Friday, everyone. On today's Locked On NHL, we catch up on the Hockey Hall of Fame nominations. The NHL makes a big jersey foul, plus we preview the NHL Awards, all on today's show.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NHL for Friday, June 23rd. I am Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here, as always, with Gil Martin of Locked On Islanders. You can find him on Twitter at IceWarsNYR, Thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. You can subscribe or follow us for free over on YouTube. We're on Sirius XM app now. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, you'll get the latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. How are you doing this Friday, Gil?
I am good. How are you, Rachel?
I'm okay. Over on Locked On Flyers, we have a weekly segment every Monday called Nemesis of the Week, and where I just, get out my frustrations and say who is the Flyers nemesis for this week in the world of hockey. And I feel like I need to bring that over to the NHL show because this week there's been some frustrating things that I feel like hockey has some nemesis floating out there for me. I don't know about you, Gail, but man, we haven't covered the Hall of Fame selections yet on Locked On NHL, so we have the unfortunate task of having to do that. And the Hockey Hall of Fame is definitely on my list. Now, don't get me wrong. Of course, Henrik Lundqvist, absolutely deserved. Caroline Ouellette, long overdue. But some of the names that did get in and some of the names that did not were very surprising to a lot of people.
Yeah, and there's always, no matter how many people they let in, there's always the next guy on or next woman on the list who deserves it and doesn't get it. And the order that people get put in is also somehow always important. This person shouldn't get in before this person, and so forth and so on. There's always controversy surrounding Hall of Fame selections.
There is. It just feels different this year that there was just some logical, like de facto people that we thought were going to get in. And of course, Alexander Mogilny is at the top of that list for the men. And, it's been long overdue. And there was some talk that maybe it had to do with just him being Russian when he defected back in the day.
Yeah.
And it just seems so like unreasonable to have that, in retrospect, be a barrier to entry to the Hockey Hall of Fame when, some of the stuff that the league and, other hockey organizations like the IIHF are dealing with, the Russian Federation. Like, that's for now and moving forward. But to like retroactively punish Alex Mogilny, who had a stellar NHL career, just seems a little backwards.
Yeah, it should not be a factor under the circumstances. To penalize somebody because of his country of origin is not good. And I hope Mogilny gets in very soon. He certainly does deserve it. And then, again, I have no question with Mike Vernon getting in, but the fact that Curtis Joseph hasn't gotten in yet, and you look at the statistics, comparing them over the course of their careers, Cujo's numbers are better than Vernon's across the board. The big difference being Cujo did not win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I just think, the fact that Henrik Lundqvist is in and did not win a Stanley Cup, I think, says, well, why not Cujo when he has the better stats than Mike Vernon and has been waiting around a lot longer, I think. And it just seems weird. Of course, like Ken Hitchcock has had an incredible career behind the bench. And, I have no argument there. But like Pierre Turgeon, I think was a big surprise
Yeah.
to a lot of people, like wasn't really on the list of like, okay, you're next up, you
Right.
know?
Now, I do think he belongs if you look at his
Sure.
numbers, but yeah, he was not considered like he wasn't expected. Let's put it that way. And then, something that you had alluded to earlier before we started recording, uh, you know, some of the women still waiting. There is a backlog there and it needs to be addressed.
It's infuriating. There are 2 spots. The men and the women, just to be clear, once again, are in separate buckets. So when you're voting for Hall of Fame nominations, it's in a completely separate bucket, and there are 4 spots for men and 2 for women, which is its own problem. But let's put that aside for a minute. The Hall of Fame has not ever nominated more than 1 woman, even though there are 2 spots available. And the backlog is astronomical of women that deserve to be in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And Caroline Ouellette is one of my all-time favorite players. I am thrilled. There is no way, shape, or form, like they should not have voted Julie Chu, her wife, in at the same time, who has an equally storied career and has contributed so much to the game of hockey, is very, very high on that backlog of lists. Megan Duggan, Jennifer Botterill, who everybody thought was getting in this year, did not get in. And there was just this empty space sitting there. And you're telling me that none of those other women could get, the number of votes needed on that committee? Like that committee needs to be completely dismantled and turned over.
I don't understand, the fact that the women adding another woman would not take away
Nope.
anybody else's spot.
Nope.
The
No
fact that they didn't
player,
add
no
it,
builder,
right.
nothing.
It does not affect the men at all. And the fact that they still won't fill the 2 spots when they're still playing catch up because they didn't induct women. I mean, it's only been a few years that they've been inducting women, relatively speaking. So to me, that is a mistake that doesn't make sense. And yeah, it's frustrating because there are so many deserving candidates out there.
Yeah, it's absolutely infuriating, and hopefully they're listening to the backlash that happened this year and will make some changes for next year. But the bar is low, Gil. The bar is very low. The bar is also very low with the NHL and what Gary Bettman decides to do when confronted with a difficult situation. And yeah, this whole specialty jersey thing, they absolutely found the wrong way to handle this. So, if you're not aware, the NHL has decided that there will be no specialty jerseys worn in warm-up skates this upcoming season. That's for any night, whether it's Military Appreciation Night, whether it's Indigenous Peoples Night, whether it's Pride Night, none of them. And this is 100% due to some of the controversy around some players who did not want to wear Pride Night jerseys on the ice. So they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater here, and just saying, well, because a very few number of players didn't want to do this one thing on this one specialty night, we're just not going to do that across the board. Now, I do understand that they did say that they're still going to have the specialty nights. There'll be other activities. So I want to make it clear that we do know that that is in fact the case. They can make these specialty jerseys and model them and auction them off, but they will not be on the ice during warmups. And to me, that misses on 2 opportunities. Number one, to allow artists work who create these jerseys to be recognized on the ice. And to have the players actually wear them on the ice. And number 2, it diminishes the value in the fundraising that they do for them afterwards because they're not necessarily, on ice worn, so they can't command as much when you're trying to raise money for these charities to support cancer patients, when you're trying to support military families, when you're trying to support Native artists and Native communities. I mean, come on. Like,
It really, I know what the league is trying to do as far as avoiding controversy, but
it just made it worse.
it just made it worse. And look, let's face it, there is no way to completely avoid controversy. No matter what you do, somebody is going to be unhappy. and sort of trying to avoid controversy, they're just creating more. So it really is not an effective way to deal with the situation.
It is not, yeah, and, it just seems like they took, the voices of the very few that were objecting to this in the first place and made it the default opinion that's very clearly not the right strategy. So, anyway, we'll see if they go back on it based on the reaction to the announcement because it was not good. It did not go over well.
We shall see, but I'm not holding my breath when it comes with the NHL.
No, no. They certainly find a way to make things worse sometimes. But we love hockey and we will continue to watch and cover this league, including the NHL Awards, which we will get to coming up next.
But first, today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs make you look good. Bird Dogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg to give you a truly sculpted look. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of a stiff, restricting cotton. Bird Dogs fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. And Bird Dog uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric. It keeps you cool and dry all day long. Go to birddogs.com/lockedonnhl. You'll get a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedonnhl for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you.
We've got so much great coverage of the NHL draft coming up next week here on Locked On NHL and the channel. So stay tuned to your feeds, especially over on YouTube, for all that great content. But before the NHL draft, also in Nashville, is the NHL Awards. And it should be a pretty fun ceremony this year. Of course, Nashville, they're going to do it up, and they have some really great guests and presenters that we'll get to. But the more important part is the actual awards themselves and who we think might win some of them. Of course, we know for sure, like Connor McDavid's got the Art Ross and all of that. And Jonathan Marchessault won the Conn Smythe and all of that. We know some of them in advance, but I think that there's some really interesting ones out there. I think starting with the Calder.
Yeah, that is going to be an interesting one. And the Calder, the three nominees: Matty Beniers of Seattle, Owen Power in Buffalo, Stuart Skinner in Edmonton. Do you have someone who you think should be the clear-cut winner here?
You know, I feel like it's between Matty Beniers and Stuart Skinner right now, and I feel like just the way that Beniers like kind of progressed over the course of the season and leads me to believe that he's the one that's going to take it, and it's a lot harder for a goalie, I think, to get the Calder.
It is because it's comparing apples to oranges, and I think
Yeah.
the goal scorer or the point getter is always more exciting to voters. But I also would lean toward Beniers in this instance.
Yeah. Another award that I think should be one of those things where, may indicate what the future looks like is the Selke Trophy. And I think to me, the Selke is always a weird award just because it's morphed in terms of, a forward having a more complete game or a defensive forward. And what does that mean? And why are points then relevant if we're talking about defensive forward? That there should be more balance to it. But, Patrice Bergeron is a mainstay here and has been here forever and has won it forever. But Nico Hischier has just had a tremendous season, and the New Jersey Devils were one of the biggest stories in the league this year in terms of how far they progressed from the previous season. And Nico Hischier, just like I think, is really poised to be the future mainstay of this category, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Bergeron is been a nominee and a winner how many times now? I get the feeling that 10 years from now we'll be saying the same thing about Hischier, that, this is his award almost every year. He's a finalist, he's a winner. He's sort of the next great player to dominate the Selke voting, I think.
Yeah, I mean, no shade on Mitch Marner.
No, none.
Quality hockey player. Just want to make that clear. It just seems like the tea leaves are pointing in Nico Hischier's direction, that this could be the year that he takes over the mantle. But there's a lot of sentimentality for Patrice Bergeron, who again
Exactly.
had an excellent season. So there's an argument to be made, and I'm very curious to see where that one ends up. So the next one I want to talk about is the Jack Adams Award, because this has the most intrigue to me of all of them, simply because since it's based on the regular season, to me, Jim Montgomery should win it. Um, Again, the voting was done before the playoffs, but it just has like the chance of being one of the most awkward awards given. Now, Dave Haxall did a phenomenal job in Seattle getting that team, as far as they did in the playoffs. Lindy Ruff turned the New Jersey Devils around. We were just talking about it with Nico Hischier. So I honestly think any one of these three winning would be well earned and well deserved. So I'm not going to complain anyway. But to have the coach of the Boston Bruins, when clearly they were out coached out of the playoffs, like the awkwardness potential is high.
Yeah, it is. But as you said at the beginning, it's not based on what happens in the playoffs. In fact, I think the voting actually takes place before the playoffs start. So, based on the regular season alone, the Bruins setting an all-time record for points. It's tough to vote any other way. But yeah, that there will be that little awkward moment if he does step up to the podium, knowing what happened in the playoffs and how the Bruins ended up being a really big disappointment to a lot of people.
Yeah. Looking at a couple of the, lesser awards, the King Clancy Memorial Trophy and the Lady Byng, I don't really have any, horse in those races, so to speak. But, in the King Clancy, we do have one of your New York Islanders in the hunt there with Anders Lee. What do you think is going to happen in this category?
Yeah, it's going to be a tight vote. I mean, look, all three of these guys are very involved in the community, very deserving of this award. Uh, the fact that you have, Backlund and Nurse along with Anders Lee, you have two guys playing in Alberta. I'm not sure how that'll affect the vote and whether the Canadian or the Alberta contingent will split their vote, and that might give Lee an advantage. But again, I think I have reviewed the resume of what all three of these players are doing in the community, and can't go wrong with any one of the three winning. How about you? Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's hard to compare and contrast in this category, but I think that it's any one of them winning would be okay by me. Looking at the Lady Byng, which again is just weird. It's a weird award. It's like fewest penalty minutes for a good player, for a better than average player, I guess
Right.
is the way to describe it.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. But your nominees are Jack Hughes, Anze Kopitar, and Braden Point.
And again, I think you sort of have a similar situation with the Selke, where Kopitar has been so good for so long. He's the sentimental veteran favorite. Jack Hughes, the young up and coming guy who may be there for a long time. I get the feeling that Kopitar will get the award based on mostly what he's done over the course of his career. But I think Hughes and even Braden Point, the third nominee, certainly deserve consideration. And I get the feeling Hughes is going to be in the mix for quite some time.
Right. That's usually how these things go, that seniority kind of wins out the day. And then, there's so many other of the awards that are, for off ice things. One thing that I think is really nice about this year is that there's the Willie O'Ree Community Hero Awards, and there is one presented to a Canadian and one to somebody from the US. And they've already presented the Canadian winner, Dean Smith from Halifax. And so Dean Smith is going to come to the award ceremony and present it to the United States winner, which I think is really nice and lovely. And so I'm looking forward to that and getting to highlight, people that you may not have heard of that do lots of really great work to grow the game and support the game in their communities. That's always one of my favorite parts of these ceremonies.
Yeah, I like seeing that get recognized. And, too often we hear about some of the negative things that athletes do off the ice or off the field. And to have that positive impact that so many athletes do make in the community and to have that be recognized, I'm always in favor of that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to get to the Hart and the Norris and the Vezina coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. My favorite part of the Game Time app is that it's great for getting notified about those last-minute flash deals. Plus, you get that all-important view from your seat all in the app. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Also, tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you'll never have to dig through your email. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, continuing our NHL Awards preview. I think, the Vezina is one of the big ones every year. And this year, man, I think it's a tough one because, of course, you have Linus Ullmark, right, who seems like the de facto winner here again, but another one of those awkward Boston situations. But you cannot deny the seasons that Ilya Sorokin and Connor Hellebuyck have had as well.
No, you can. And I think the big difference is the quality of the teams that were in front of Hellebuyck and Sorokin did not come close to matching Ullmark's, the defensive ability and the overall talent in front of him. But, Ullmark, he won the Triple Crown, goals against average, save percentage, wins for a goalie. So I can't see him not winning the award, but if you sort of break it down and make adjustments for the quality of the teams in front of them, I think you can make a good case for either Sorokin or Hellebuyck over Ullmark, but I don't think that they're going to win.
No, you got to do some extra math there.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
all right. The James Norris. I think this is an interesting one just because we have Adam Fox, who has more of the reputation than the actual results from this past year. I think, don't get me wrong, Adam Fox is an incredible defenseman. But when you look at the other nominees in Erik Karlsson, especially who had a career year, and of course, Cale Makar, who's going to be hanging around this category for a long time, but also had struggles this year as well. I mean, I feel like it's Erik Karlsson's to lose, but what do you think?
It has to be Karlsson. First player since 1991, 92 to get 100 points as a defenseman in a season. Brian Leach did it back then. When you do something that hasn't been done in more than 30 years, I think you've got to get the award. This, like you said, has been a career year for Karlsson. And the amazing thing is he's probably available via trade this offseason just to
I know, it's wild.
yeah, just to add to the drama. but I've got to give it to Karlsson.
Yeah, I think so. And then, of course, the big one is the Hart Memorial Trophy. And this year's nominees are Connor McDavid, David Pastrnak, and Matthew Tkachuk. And that is a remarkable bunch right there.
It is. And, all three of them certainly deserving to be finalists. But the way McDavid's season went,
I know.
I got to go with McDavid. I mean, any other year, Pastrnak and Tkachuk would certainly be serious candidates. And with Tkachuk, you can't count what he did in the playoffs. So
Yep.
you got to sort of put that out of your mind. But McDavid's numbers were so good and he was so consistent and incredible all year long. My vote would go to McDavid.
Yeah, I can't argue with that at all. And then the Jim Gregory GM of the Year award. This is fascinating to me. Don Sweeney in Boston, of course, Bill Zito in Florida, and then Jim Nill in Dallas. And I think Dallas tends to get like overshadowed a little bit in these conversations, but what a season they put together this year. And especially with the kind of personnel management that they had to contend with. Just a remarkable season. So I just want to make sure he gets recognized. But to me, Bill Zito wins this award.
Yeah, I would go with Zito also. I mean, you can make a case. You made a nice case for Nill, who did some incredible things, and Sweeney putting together a record-setting team during the regular season. But to me, the reason I would vote for Bill Zito is because he took a team that won the President's Trophy a year ago and made so many changes to it. And again, you can't count the playoffs, but the way this team, after a slow start, gelled, came together, finished strong, and then what they did in the playoffs, it was an incredible, gutsy set of moves by Bill Zito. I would give him the nod.
Yeah, I just don't think there's really another like realistic choice there. Again, all three did great jobs in completely
Absolutely.
different circumstances, but Bill Zito gets that one for me. Yeah, very much looking forward to this awards session. There is the Ted Lindsay, but it's, to me, it's less important overall in the context of the rest of these awards. But the ceremony itself should be a lot of fun. Pekka Rinne is going to be there. A big Nashville flavor. A lot of country artists. Trisha Yearwood will be there. The Preds GM David Poyle's going to be there. A bunch of the different TNT broadcasters will be involved as well. And Sarah Nurse will be part of the broadcast. So Willie O'Ree's going to be there. Very much looking forward to this as part of like kicking off this week leading up to the draft.
It's going to be a great week for hockey fans. You got the awards, you got the draft, probably a lot of trades also going to take place during the draft. When you have all 32 GMs in a room for 2 or 3 days, lots of things can happen. So I'm really looking forward to the week ahead.
I am as well. And you can check out the Locked On NHL mock draft in the feed of this very show over on YouTube. You can see who the hosts from around the league picked for their teams in this year's upcoming draft. And then, Gil, you'll be back on Monday to talk to 3 of those hosts, most likely about the upcoming draft, I would guess.
Indeed, a lot of draft talk, and certainly looking forward to previewing it on the Monday show because it's just a couple of days after that.
All right. Thanks so much for listening/watching, and have a great weekend, everybody.